All righty. Good afternoon, and welcome to the noon edition of Road to Success. I'm Carolyn Nelson Goddard, your Florida PTA president. We are very fortunate today to have a guest facilitator, Sherry Eisler. Sherry is a mom of two and a nurse practitioner from the Orange County Council area. Sherry's going to be talking to us about children with food allergies. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the members of our board of directors who are with us. Kay Hawkins, our Central Region representative.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Kay. Melanie Gamble, who is our media and marketing chair and our incoming Escambia County Council president.
Hello, everyone.
Vanessa Blazik, who is our Pasco County Council president.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. And welcome, Aaron and Laura. We're glad that you're with us. So Sherry, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before I bring up the presentation?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am a mom of two. My kids are 5 and 7. And like Ms. Carolyn said, I am a nurse practitioner. I've been a nurse since 2006. So been in healthcare for a long, long time. Yeah, but this whole anaphylaxis thing is completely new to me. I'm not a pediatric nurse. I work in GYN oncology. So when I had my oldest son 7 years ago, when he was just an infant, that's when I learned about food allergies and the importance and the dangers of severe reactions and everything, which then when he went to kindergarten, that's what started me on my journey as like a food allergy advocate when I found all these gaping, dangerous holes that our children are facing right now. My presentation is anaphylaxis in public schools to ensure the safety and inclusion of kids with food allergies. So,
ready for me?
Yes.
Shall I? All right.
Yes, thank you.
Moment, I'll bring it up.
So while she's pulling that up, I'll just say when my son started kindergarten, I had already gone to the school, disclosed his food allergies, supplied the EpiPen in the clinic, did all of that. Then there was a before and after program, extended day, that was contracted with the school. So I thought he'd be safest there because it's on campus and contracted with the county. So I disclosed all of the food allergy information, the EpiPen information with the extended day program. And then on the first day of school, kindergarten morning, I went to drop him off and went to ask the extended day about their protocols, you know, how they would identify my son. He has it set in the nurse's clinic, but also in his lunchbox. And that's when they told me, oh no, we don't do EpiPens here. We would call 911. I said, that's unacceptable. My son's reaction is his airway and he would be dead before an ambulance got here. Then they went on to say the nurse will give it. I'm like, no, your before and after care, the nurse isn't here. And they said, oh, well, I don't think he can be in our program. Then the director of the program called me a couple of hours later and kicked him out. She said, your son has to be withdrawn immediately if he can't administer his own EpiPen. I said, he can administer it, but he's 5 years old. And if he's having trouble breathing, he's gonna need somebody to help him. And they said that they wouldn't do it. And so he had to be withdrawn. They kicked him out, which was discrimination. Kids with anaphylaxis are protected by the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I've been trying to work with my local Orange County Public School Board. They've been very, very resistant, but it's been very difficult. But I've also now encountered parents all over the state of Florida who kind of have these troubles. Some of them just avoid public school altogether because they don't trust the system and what's going to happen. So that's my little background on what got me on this. So the next slide, let's just talk about anaphylaxis. What is anaphylaxis? It's a disease, not a diet. That's a picture of my son. FARE stands for Food Allergy Research and Education. They're the nation's leading nonprofit organization to advocate on the more than 33 million Americans with food allergies. Anaphylaxis is a sudden and severe allergic reaction that may cause death. And anaphylaxis can be not only from food, but also bee stings, medications, latex, some environmental things as well. And food allergies are a growing public health concern that affects approximately 8% of children, which is an average of 2 in every classroom. That number has more than doubled in the last decade, with more than 6 million children in the US, including over 235,000 children in Florida with food allergies. And more than 40% of children with food allergies have been treated in the emergency department for severe reactions in anaphylaxis. That's a very big number. And in my research and everything, the CDC, Florida Department of Education, American Academy of Pediatrics, so many bodies have published guidelines recommending for teachers and staff to have training on recognition of anaphylaxis. However, they're just guidelines, and therefore it's left up to the school districts, and a lot of them are not doing it, which can be tragic, and you'll see, because teachers are usually going to be the first ones to notice signs of a reaction. On the next slide here, these are children who have actually died from anaphylaxis while at school. They didn't die on campus, but they were exposed on campus, had a reaction, and either because of delayed EpiPens or no EpiPens, these children wound up dying in the emergency room. The one cheerleader that you see, she just died 2 years ago. She was a high school senior. The girl in the middle, Emerson K. Cole, she died just last year. She was 8 years old, I believe. Then the gentleman in blue, he died 2 years ago. The little boy with glasses, he's actually from the UK, but he died from bullying. He was severely allergic to cheese, and some bullies just put it down the back of his shirt. He didn't even eat it. And he wound up in the ICU and died from anaphylaxis. And then the little boy, Elijah, with the umbrella, he was 3 when he died at a daycare. He was allergic to cheese. The teachers forgot, gave him a grilled cheese, and he died from it. So again, there are many more deaths that happen from anaphylaxis, but these are children who were exposed at school. So this is a very real threat. On the next slide, this just talks about recognizing and treating anaphylaxis, because you can, so the thing with food allergies and anaphylaxis, if somebody has a food allergy, or any allergy, even to bee stings, you can never predict what their reaction is going to be if they're exposed to it again. Sometimes it can be mild, it can be less, or they could have had a mild reaction before, but get exposed to again and then have anaphylaxis without knowing it. So severe symptoms are the airway, shortness of breath, because your airway is actually closing. And that's how a lot of people die from anaphylaxis, their airway just closes. You can get severely swollen lips and tongues, which will block your airway. You can get severe shock, which is kind of, it just comes on very suddenly, where your body literally fails you. Your blood pressure drops, your heart can't pump anymore, you can't breathe. So epinephrine is the only FDA-approved treatment for anaphylaxis. And epinephrine should be administered immediately to avoid something called biphasic reactions. Biphasic reactions means you have a reaction. If you wait too long to treat it with epinephrine or anything, you can actually have another reaction 8 to 12 hours later, sometimes even when you're sleeping. Sometimes more than one dose of epinephrine is necessary, and this is becoming more and more prevalent. This is why now the FDA has required, back in the day when I was a pharmacy tech, gosh, over 20 years ago, you could buy just one EpiPen, but now it must come in a 2-pack because they realize that sometimes one is not enough. And one crazy statistic is that 25% of children who receive epinephrine in schools have no known allergy at the time. So this is usually stock epinephrine. Not all schools carry stock epinephrine. When I say stock epinephrine, I just mean epinephrine that's on campus, not tied to a student, because usually it's a student who has a prescription from a doctor who has to bring it with the label and everything. But 25% of kids who get epinephrine at schools, no known allergy at the time. The saying is epi first, then 911, because these reactions can come on very quickly and severely, and it could be too late by the time 911 call comes. And Not all ambulances and police cars, EMS responders have epinephrine. Antihistamines and steroids will not stop anaphylaxis, and it may actually delay the recognition of anaphylaxis. So one of the boys that I showed you who died, the boy in blue, he actually died because the school nurse didn't treat him with epinephrine quickly enough. She gave him Benadryl first. And then like 10 minutes later, he wasn't responding and whatnot, so it was too late. And so he died from anaphylaxis. The next slide shows the top 9 food allergens. It used to be 8, but last year the CDC and FDA did recognize that sesame was the new 9th big emerging allergy. So there are more than 170 foods that are known to cause allergic reactions, but these 9 foods cause 9 out of 10 reactions in the United States. That's peanuts, tree nuts, crustaceans or shellfish, milk, eggs, wheat, soybeans, and sesame. So that's a lot of stuff. Very popular foods. The next slide, living with food allergies. Again, that's the boy from the UK that died from his food allergy. But 1 in 3 children report being bullied about their food allergy. You know, I know as part of the PTA, we all worry about our kids' mental health, and children with food allergies do suffer from more depression and anxiety, not even just from everyday things, but worrying at school. Is somebody going to bring something I'm allergic to? Is somebody going to touch me? Is it safe to go on the playground? Because a lot of times schools don't have kids wash their hands after lunch and then they go right to the playground. Children are often excluded from classroom and school parties. Even with my son's 504 plan and talking to the teachers, it's just impossible for these teachers to know when parents are going to bring cupcakes and whatnot for parties and everything, and then our kids are left out. Even though we do provide, most food allergy parents do provide snacks in case of these unknown parties and things, it's not the same when my kid's eating like an Oreo and everybody has good looking cupcakes or donuts and everything. And then some of them have such severe allergies that they can't even participate at all. Caring for children with food allergies in the US costs families about $25 billion annually. So this is also a big deal with the PTA, because we know that our children who are most vulnerable often can't afford the things that they need. And yeah, there has been a 377% increase in anaphylactic reactions between 2007 and 2016. 2016 is obviously a long time ago, and it has been even more since then. We just don't have that data yet. How can we help? The next slide. First and foremost is to prevent allergic reactions and anaphylaxis. But we all know, especially in school, avoiding the allergen is not always possible in a public setting. We can't control what other kids are bringing in with foods and whatnot. Teachers often do projects and whatnot with food. It's important to wash hands not only before eating for germs, but also after eating to prevent cross contact, because some kids are so allergic to foods that if you touch the food and then touch them, they can definitely get a reaction. We should make a movement to start offering non-food rewards, such as stickers, glow sticks, and trinkets, rather than little candies and treats, and just try to avoid the use of food in the curriculum period. We need to educate our students and teachers and faculty and staff about food allergies and how to recognize symptoms of an allergic reaction and emergency first aid. Which I will get into in a second. EpiPens can sound scary because there's a needle, but it's really not at all. And I wish I had my trainer device to show you just how easy it is. We need to keep epinephrine accessible and create policies and legislation to protect our children. Because I can't tell you how many parents I've encountered who go to the district, they get the runaround, and nothing is happening. OCPS, the senior health director of OCPS, even told me, unless there's a law or a mandate, we're not doing it. Because here, teachers unions and stuff, it's all voluntary if teachers want to be trained or not. That's by the district as well. But of course, there's nursing shortages and stuff, but I have a solution to that. And that's a picture of my son when he was an infant. He also had eczema. Lots of food allergy kids have eczema, so I didn't know that he had food allergies. I thought this was eczema, but it turns out that this was a very bad allergic reaction. On the next slide, this is where we talk about solutions, right? Training. Oh, sorry, skipped one. We should train teachers and staff, including before and after care, especially if they're contracted and they're on campus, because a lot of parents are assuming that their kids are safe and have continuity of care, meaning if their EpiPens are in the health clinic on school, that they're accessible during before and after care, and that is not the case. And these before and after care programs don't even have to notify the parents. So actually in schools, most allergic reactions happen in the classroom, not in the cafeteria. But allergic reactions have also occurred on the playground, on the sports field, clinic, and school buses even. And there are currently no Florida state laws that require training on recognition of anaphylaxis. I have contacts in the Florida Department of Health and Florida Department of Education who both agree that there should be, but there is nothing written. Parents, yeah, like I said, parents often assume their kids are safe on campus, including before and after care, but the staff doesn't have access. And then this also brings up after school activities, you know, trunk or treats, this and that. Nobody's trained, or no one has to have training. And then something else that got brought up to my attention is that some districts will say that a teacher, if they have a student with an EpiPen, that they will get trained for field trips. And even if that teacher has training, they are not allowed to give it on in the classroom. It has to be given by somebody in the front office or the clinic, which doesn't make sense to me. Because in Florida, I believe it was 2016, the Kelsey-Ryan Act was passed, which allows students to self-carry and self-administer their epinephrine. We just have to get a form signed by the physician. However, schools are not necessarily notifying parents and students that they have that right. My son does, so he carries a set on him in his lunchbox in the classroom. So if the teacher is trained and the EpiPens are there, why can the teacher not help with administration if they can? On the next slide, training is fast, easy, and free. Literally, those 3 pictures are the steps to administer epinephrine. There are a couple of different devices due to manufacturers, but you just pop the top and then you just inject it on the side of the thigh. That's all that you do. You're not exposed to the needle. It's very, very simple. And talking to some out-of-state school districts that do train their teachers and staff, my sister, she lives in Portland, Oregon. She is a school nurse. She says in her district, they do offer training to all of the teachers. And what they do is they watch a 20-minute video online at their own time or whatever, and then they just email her to schedule a 2-minute demonstration where she'll go to the campuses, she has the training devices, and then they just demonstrate to her that they can do it. There's also a free online training offered from FAIR, Food Allergy Research and Education, and I attached the link to it. That video takes about 20 minutes to complete as well, and there's a certificate at the end, and there is a Florida statute, and it does state that, you know, if a FAIR does meet all the criteria to where school districts can use their videos for training. American Red Cross and other programs offer training as well, but they are not free. Those are $35. But most districts that do train their teachers, they utilize their district nurses to do that. Florida statutes protect teachers and staff from liability, so they don't have to worry about that, although some of them do. The ones that I've encountered that don't want to complete the training are worried about liability, but they're protected in Florida. And the main thing, a big takeaway is no harm will happen if epinephrine is given, even if it wasn't necessary, because that's another concern. How do I know if they need it or not? If you have any doubts, but you know that they just ate and they're not looking right, it's safer to give it than to not. On the next slide, this talks about some legislation. I had
Sherry,
oh yes,
you have one hand up. Would you like to go ahead and take a question?
oh yes,
or...
yes.
Okay. Laura?
Actually, I could wait until she's finished with the presentation. I just have a couple of suggestions and pointers
Okay,
Oh,
for
great.
advocacy and information.
Oh,
all
great.
right.
Thank you. Um, so legislation, I did work, Representative Rita Harris and Senator Linda Stewart both filed HB 65 and SB 52 regarding anaphylaxis in public schools this last session, but it died in committee. Representative Trabulsi was the chair of that committee from, I believe, West Palm or Fort Pierce. But I'm trying to work with her to see why she let it die. But what that legislation was going to do was to require all Florida school districts to adopt policies on anaphylaxis and to require 50% of teachers and staff, including before and after care, to train on recognition of anaphylaxis and EpiPen administration. Again, that died in committee, but Representative Harris did say that she will work with me to file it again for next session. So we just have, and this is why I need PTA's help too. We need to work together to see how we can protect these more than 235,000 children in Florida with food allergies. On the federal level, there is some legislation out there now, nothing to address anaphylaxis in schools specifically, but there's the ADINA Act, which would require prescription and over-the-counter medications to be labeled for the top 9 allergens and gluten, just like food has to be. There's Dillon's Law that is in session or filed, which would allow anybody to carry EpiPens and administer them if needed. And that was started after a couple lost their 16-year-old son who died from a bee sting. And then my local congressman, Maxwell Frost, he filed the EpiPen Act, which would cap the cost of a set of EpiPens at $60. Because right now, even with insurance, it can cost hundreds of dollars. And then let's see. Yeah, the next slide, I just have some references. Yeah, and that's that. I'll gladly take any questions or comments or help, advice, anything.
Okay, so let's go ahead with Laura, and then we have a couple of other hands that are up.
I just want to, first of all, thank you for this topic and this presentation. This topic is, I hate to put it this way, but near and dear to my heart. My oldest kid, who is now 23, had anaphylactic food allergies. No longer does, but did. And I can remember his starting kindergarten. And when I was just registering him for school, there was a lot of back and forth between myself and district staff and school staff as to whether or not my kid would need a 504 plan. The school staff said, oh no, they would take care of it. And the district said, no, absolutely, he should have a 504 plan. And we did get that established. And then I learned to refine that over the years. So my recommendation for you and for anyone else is to do something similar, but don't go through the years of search I did to find out some of these accommodations that made a huge difference in our lives. One of the first ones was to require training, because you can on that 504 plan, and you can in your IEP require that, because and anaphylactic food allergies can qualify under other health impairment for an IEP as well. And that provides even further protections than the 504 does. My kid just had the 504, and it did work for us, but it did take time. So including the training, I included that there should be notice to me. I think I had at least 1 week in advance of any food that was going to be in the classroom. And that specifically if any food that was going to be included any curriculum lesson plans. And that goes back to having a free and appropriate education, that making sure that your child has the same access to the same education that every other student in that classroom has. And so when my son was in 8th grade and doing the teacher was doing, it was a high school level science class and had decided that the lab they should be doing was to cut a Snickers bar and observe the various layers as being similar to that in Earth. So I said, and she did let me know beforehand. So I said, great, here's what I can do. I can create X, Y, and Z to make, so that the whole class would not be using these lovely Snickers bars. And we could do that. And then the teacher objected, saying that, but the worksheet says Snickers. I said, fine, I will type up the new worksheet so that everyone can see. It will all be fine. And she ended up deciding that that was too much work and decided not to use the food. But before she even came to that, she said, well, could your son go into the library? And I said, well, that's not an equivalent education. And she said, well, could he just call in? And I said, that's not equivalent. So no, that's not appropriate. That does not work. That would be giving him a different education than every single other kid in the classroom. And so it really helped to make those rules within the 504 plan, within those accommodations, to make sure that I got the notice and that was there. So I do highly recommend that. I know a lot of food allergy parents just have it within their 504, their IEP, that there should be no food in the classroom whatsoever. And some have it within their accommodations that children's hands should get washed after lunch upon re-entering the classroom, or when returning from recess, or at the beginning of the day, as all of those things are. The other part is Palm Beach County, because I was told actually that there were occasions where teachers would take food that was my kid was allergic to, and like when my kid was in 4th grade, there was a teacher who, and my kid was anaphylactic to milk, who brought in, for a lark, brought in hot chocolate to be made in the morning for the kids to enjoy. And my son was allergic to 11 different foods. And so reading food labels, even at that age, was quite difficult, because you have to know both the scientific names, then the common names, and the variety of names for different items. And so that was not a skill that he had at that time. And so when he asked if he could have it, because we've given him equivalent foods over the years, she said she didn't know. He should take the box out of the garbage and read it and figure it out. So he touched the milk that was on the box in the garbage and came home with, thank God at that point it was only hives, but came home. So I was not very happy. And they had other teachers who decided that the appropriate thing to do was to cook in the library and other such items. And that, again, that was not acceptable. And so Palm Beach County does have a school board policy for students with life-threatening health conditions. And I do highly recommend that as PTA volunteers, something is similar is developed in other parts of the state, because it does clearly outline schools' responsibilities, teachers' responsibilities, parents' responsibilities, and how all can work together to protect our students. And I think that that's quite helpful. The other problem with it is that a lot of people are not aware of the school board policy. So part of this, of being able to fight and advocate for a policy being put into place, is to make sure that our parents are aware of what the policy is and what they can do. Like you had mentioned, that there's with understanding what the laws are, that people are just not, they don't know what it is, and so then they lose their power. And one last bit was that included in National PTA's position statement, we do have that the National PTA and constituent organizations should encourage parents and which one is strongly in color organizations strongly encourage all exhibitors, vendors, and sponsors to provide upon request all allergen information pertinent to their products. And so with that, it would be helpful if our PTA events had food allergy labels, if we made sure that we have semi-equivalent food items for our food allergy families, because food allergies can be in children and they can also be in adults. So this isn't only for events where we have only children present. We need to be aware of when it is for anyone. Um, and that includes whether it's a meeting, a luncheon, whatever, whenever we're serving food, we should have the labels and we should make sure that there's something there for people who cannot eat, whatever that may be. And we have some options. And I agree with the food. I started a program at the elementary school of treats, not sweets. So it was an exchange program of little toys to give, but it also included coupons of, be whether it's principal for the day or, teacher for the hour, whatever it may be, some non-food related rewards, or to sit at lunch with your friend, whatever might work, that those types of items can also be really great because those don't cost anything where the toys do. And you can just print out those coupons and make that easy for people. And the other part is a lot of our PTA programs do focus on food in some way or another. And it would be great if we found a way that we could still have programs and not focus on food, because it really does leave kids feeling left out and not a part of the community. And it does the same thing for the parents when it becomes yet another hurdle to have to overcome in order to just be a part of your school community. And again, I just want to say thank you for all the work you're
Thank
doing.
you. Oh, thank you, Laura. And thank you for all of your comments and suggestions and everything. Um, this is definitely a learning process for me because my son was only in first grade this time. And I definitely appreciate your tips. What I have found though, with the 504 plan, my son doesn't have, so what the problem with 504 plans is a parent doesn't know what they can and can't ask for. And it's very individual depending where your child goes to school, even within the same district. So I did request in kindergarten for my son's teachers to be trained on anaphylaxis and EpiPen training, and they told me no, that it was voluntary. They can't make any teachers do that. And then this year, I heard from a parent, I think somewhere in the Daytona Beach area, that once the school year started, the teacher, they requested for the teacher to have training. The teacher didn't feel comfortable with it, so they changed the student out of her classroom. That's just crazy to me. So, and then the thing is with the 504 plan, I do have that I'll be notified at least 48 hours in advance whenever there's going to be food brought into the classroom. However, like I said, that doesn't always happen. Either it's with teachers forgetting or parents last minute bringing in snacks for a kid's birthday or this and that. And then what it does is it pits the parent against the teacher, because then I ask the principal, what happens when a 504 is violated? And then it's, oh, we need to discuss it with the teacher. It's a very bad place. But yeah, the 504 and the IEP, whenever people can get that, that's definitely important. But it's just unfortunate that unless you know what to ask for, you often don't. And I worry about the kids and the parents who aren't as on top of things as we are. And like you said, you learn as you go. And so by the time we get more information, it's a lot late. Palm Beach County is really great. I read Sneakers for Oakley Ambassador. Oakley, I think, was from Palm Beach County, West Palm. Is Palm Beach County West Palm too?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you know of Oakley. Oakley died when he was 11 from his peanut allergy, but it wasn't at school. But yeah, I just feel like we need more awareness and education on food allergies. I feel like with food allergies, they get made fun of a lot in movies and in media. There was actually an Uber Eats commercial that was going to air during the Super Bowl making fun of food allergies, but the fair community got Uber Eats to actually take it down like 2 days before the Super Bowl, which was fantastic. But I bet you could watch movies and TV now, and like even comedians, still to this day, there was just a British comedian on TV making fun of food allergies, and a family was just denied a flight because of their kids' like peanut allergy. So there definitely needs to be more awareness, more things need to happen. And unfortunately, when I tried to pass legislation this year, the Florida legislators that I saw when I went to Tallahassee, they were all, I showed them the picture of the kids who died with food allergies, and they're like, "Oh, are these in Florida?" I was like, "No, not yet. No one's died in Florida yet." And then they're like, "Oh," like they lost interest. And I said, like, it seems like we're waiting for it to happen before we take action. This has already happened. This girl died last year. These three died the year before, and so on, so on. But it's like until something happens in Florida, I don't know.
That's happened in Florida.
So we actually have a
happened in
couple of
Florida.
more hands up. So I'm going to go to Kay and then Enrique.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say about the price of the EpiPens. Even with my insurance, it is very, very high. I'm highly allergic to bee stings, and they are like around me like somebody with a gun, because it won't take long for my throat to start swelling and I can't breathe. So it's to lower the price of those, because there's people that have allergies that can't defend themselves because they can't afford the EpiPens. And I just think that is a very serious situation, because they have to be renewed. I mean, their expiration dates. So,
Right.
people don't have
Right.
the money, and it's just really, really sad. I'm sure people probably have passed away because they couldn't afford the EpiPen. So I really hope there is something done to cap the price of them.
So that law that I put in here, HB whatever it is, Representative Frost, he actually has anaphylaxis, and he went into anaphylaxis and couldn't afford an EpiPen. His was expired by like 6 years and whatnot. But he's the one that filed it. We need to get more senators and in Congress people involved. And I don't know how well versed people are in politics. I just started learning about it this year, and it's like it's very bogged down. But yeah, like in Florida, we have Senator Scott and Senator Rubio.
Mhm.
They're not very responsive. Like I did go to DC. Some of the pictures in the slideshow were from when FAIR went to DC. We do Courage at Congress every year, and we go, it's Americans nationwide, go to try to meet their Congress people in the Capitol. But yeah, none of them are available. Multiple food allergy advocates have emailed them to request them to sponsor the bill, but they haven't yet. But I just met a young girl at Publix this weekend who is severely anaphylactic to poultry, and it's airborne. And she works at the Publix bakery, and she said if somebody in the deli leaves a rotisserie open too long, she'll start to get itching in her throat. And she said she didn't have EpiPens though, because she only worked part-time because she was in college and she couldn't afford the EpiPens. So I went and I brought her some of Lincoln, my son, some of his EpiPens that expired in January. And because the thing is, the EpiPen device, it only costs $8 to manufacture the device, and it's $1 for the medication. So it's $9 for that device. However, insurances and pharmacies play all these games with pricing and everything. Anyway, I gave her the expired EpiPens because the medication is still good. It's just they put the expiration date on the device. But I did tell her, I was like, his dose is because he's 7. I was like, if you needed these, you would need both EpiPens. And she's like, oh yeah, because there's a junior dose and there's the adult dose. And she almost broke down in tears, like so thankful. She's like, thank you so much. I haven't had EpiPens in years. I'm so scared, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I will try to find some adult who has a gently expired EpiPen. I don't know. So, but yeah, EpiPens definitely need to be more affordable. Not to take away from Narcan for drug overdoses, but Narcan is available for free. All policemen carry it and everything, yet EpiPens, yeah, they're not on all first responder vehicles, and they're just not accessible to some.
I make sure I tell everybody that I'm around, that I have an EpiPen in my purse or in whatever I'm carrying, because I don't know if I were to get stung, if I would have time to administer it to myself before
Right.
I had a reaction. So it is important, but I do hope they cap the cost of those.
Thank you, Kate. Enrique?
Yes, I'm not going to go as long as Laura because she touched every single things that my experience have done. I learned about allergies when my son was in pre-K and they were giving them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to the pre-K, and he starts swelling. The teacher called because we always have kept contacts because of their medical issues. My son is a liver transplant with immunosuppressed, so we were have good contacts. And when she called us, we called the primary, his pediatrician, and he said, hang up the phone and call 911. And basically that could have been, his last day. And about one thing that I arrived late because somebody canceled my invite. So I thought that it was not, but I joined. But thank you for this issue had been, and I think I brought, when I was in the national PTA, we brought this issue to the upfront because we were not aware, and it's important that we instruct the teachers early on because we as parents don't know until it happens. And sometimes if it's not enough intervention at the time, and the kid must die. In New York, a couple of years ago, kids exchange lunches, and one died because of that things that should be people education. It should be awareness. For Cherry, I have some expired EpiPens, so if we can talk that on the side. Um, but it's important. We don't know, even if we are aware. When I was traveling abroad, we always look for foods that are things in other countries and other areas, even rural, or they are not aware. And you say, okay, here from the 5 top allergens, you can check all of them in my son. And basically, all the food he's allergic to, we have done really extensive because of partially because he is allergic, but partially because of his immunosuppression. The only 2 things that he was not allergic was wine, white wine and red wine. And he cannot drink because of his, but it is an important issue. The other thing that was touched was the 504 and the IEPs. If it interferes with education, a IEP has to be, and it will be faster than a 504 because 504s are an ADA accommodation. IEPs are IDEA access to education. If it affects, like Laura mentioned, and that was great that you mentioned it, if it interferes in one way or another with education, once it's identified, they only have a limited time to respond and intervene, to do the assessment. And education again goes back into that. This year at legislative session, I was with just appointed last year for the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council, and I was attending, and in the table of the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council, they have peanut, Reese's, and all these things, and I pointed to the staff. They were not really happy that I have pointed to them. But if it's in an open forum, like you mentioned, and it's foods, and kids don't think. they take it, eat it, and then that. And I learned something from today. My wife always carries an EpiPen. I don't, and I sometimes with my son. So I learned that I have to carry EpiPen with myself, and we have. It's not, and because he to peanuts, we have three 911 calls because of accidental. The first one was because we didn't know. The other one, my daughter was around 7, 8 years old, and she loves peanuts, and she gave it to the boy, my son, and he started blowing. Now it's funny. She said, "I killed the baby," but we end up. That was the second. The third one, we were traveling for my high school reunion. And even that we are careful, some of the food was contaminated, even that we have asked not to be. And we end up in the hospital also, abroad. But education, I think that we have. The other thing is we have the advocacy for Florida on those two bills. Please engage us in the Florida Developmental Disability Council. Also, Florida, I was also with the Disability Rights Florida in some of the schools that may deny or access. Is really they will push, whatever for recommendations. So, and that's one of the things that I always had brought up, maybe not to the extent that this forum is so great, because it's something that, out of sight, out of mind. And if it doesn't happen to you, you're not aware. The other example of my son, like you said with the girl that they were preparing sandwiches once, and my story, because of the mist of the peanuts, he started swelling. Nothing really as if he has eaten, but start reacting to it. So everything that has been said here, and Lara, your presentation was great too. Cherry, your was great, but Laura brought really good points about how to access and educate that. So thank you, and that's it for me. My 5 cents.
Thank you, Enrique. Are there any questions for Sherry? Well, Sherry, I don't see any hands. I want to thank you for joining us today. We look forward to your presentation again this evening. Oh, Laura, you have a question?
Not really a question, but just if you're getting mixed responses at the school level, my recommendation is to go up to the district level.
Oh, I did. I
Oh,
did.
okay. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Just
thank
to-
you. Thank you.
Just to make sure. But yeah, and I did learn that 48 hours is an insufficient amount of time. I do highly recommend at least a week of notice. It did make a huge difference, and it made it easier, especially once my kid got into middle school and high school, to have that. And it included any cooking in the classroom, any food preparation in the classroom, because my kid was also allergic to airborne food allergens. So I do, like, the PTA would pop popcorn in the courtyard on Fridays to raise money. But being there made my kids' throat itchy. So, and the label on the package did not show any dairy, but the label on the actual cardboard box where it came in did show dairy. So it was really a matter of trying to figure out what was going on. So then I ended up having to get special permission from my kid to not be in the courtyard with everybody else when they finished lunch on Fridays, to be able to find that as a solution, because clearly itchy throat. And one other suggestion I would just give in this for the presentation, the description of how it feels and how people describe anaphylaxis was great, except that that's not always the way that young children describe it. And that you might want to include that young children describe it with an itchy throat, or they're just pointing and scratching at their throat, because often they don't have the words to use to say, you know, their airways are closing or something like that. And that can be helpful. And I found that helpful to share with teachers, because they would need to know how my kid might describe what was going on with them. And that's trying to put it into the language that both teachers need or anybody else would need.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah,
Those
I
are very,
appreciate that.
very helpful.
Yeah,
You know.
I know we're running short on time. Again, like it depends on your district and who your staffing specialist is, what they will and won't allow. Because I did ask for a week advance. They said that's not reasonable, so we settled on 48 hours. But my takeaway is, even 25% of kids that get epinephrine don't even know of an allergy. So yes, us parents and children who have known allergies, we need to do our part. But how can we protect all these children as a whole? Teachers should be trained, period, on recognition of anaphylaxis, and have EpiPen training. So again, I really appreciate the PTA for letting me be here today to talk about this, but I also would love to work with the Florida PTA to see how we can work together, or how to get legislation passed to make sure that kids in all of Florida are safe. Because Palm Beach County does have that policy. I looked at it, I printed it out, but I called other districts, and other districts don't have policies. So it's just, how do we get to protect children in all of Florida?
Thank you, Sherry, very, very much for being with us during our noontime Road to Success. Thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to you joining us for future training sessions. Make sure that you register for our leadership convention, which is coming up July 18th through 21st, because I want to see you all there. As I say, Sani Da. Also, if you are on our constant contact email list, you would have received an email recently about our delegate briefings that are coming up. And if you're a member of the board of directors, about training that you have coming up. So keep an eye out for that email. Look for it if you haven't already received it. So those of you who can join us this evening and bring someone back with you, please do so. This is an important item, and we need to take care of all of our children, not just my child or your child, but all children. Thanks again, and have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.